This is Michael Woodward, and this is Season 2, Episode 53 of the Jumblethink Podcast.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we'll give you some tips and ideas of how you can take your own ideas and dreams and change the world around you. Our guest on today's episode is Jarl Jenson. More about Jarl in a moment. Our guest on Thursday's episode is Claude Zendano. Claude is the founder of Stadium Red Studios. He's worked with people like Drake, Eminem, Yo-Yo Ma, and the Chicago Symphony. He's now on a new adventure, and we get to talk about that and so much more in our interview with Claude Zendano. So make sure to check out Thursday's episode with Claude. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host, and we have an incredible episode for you today. Before we dive in today, I want to encourage you, wherever you like to listen to your podcast, go on over and click that subscribe button. You can find us in all the normal places like Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many, many other places. If you like to listen to your podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, all you need to do is go on over to jumblethink.com/iTunes. And if you like listening on Spotify, simply go to jumblethink.com/Spotify. It will take you right to the apps where you can click that subscribe button, and you'll never miss another episode of the Jumblethink Podcast. Today's guest is Jarl Jenson. Let's take a moment to learn a little bit more about Jarl. Our guest today is Jarl Jenson. He is doing some really cool stuff. Jarl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I am excited to dive into the topics. We're going to do that in a little bit. But before we do that, I want you to share the name of your business, your role at the business, and what the business is doing.
Well, the name of my business is Optimizing America. At this point, it's a book, and it has a couple of supporting books with it. And we're trying to create change. I'm trying to make the world better for when my kids grow up, and this is my effort to do so.
Love that. So good to want to make a change that's lasting and think about what comes ahead in future generations. For you, what led you to this revelation to start writing this book, Optimize America, to start sharing this message? When did this big idea and dream really start for you?
Well, I mean, really, it started a long time ago. I've always worked with ideas. My first patent, I was 16 years old. That patent wound up being the foundation for Euromed, a company I sold 2 years ago and has made me a very fortunate person. And along the way, I've maybe have more than a dozen patents that created a lot of successful product lines. But my whole life, I've been an idea person, a daydreamer. And I work with ideas, and I try, I make them come to fruition and turn them into businesses.
We're going to be talking more about your book in a little bit. When did you start noticing this shift in the economy, which is what your book's all about, and redefining how we view it?
Well, I mean, really, it really started with the Great Recession in 2007, 2008, and just paying attention to what the economists were saying, what the Federal Reserve did, the quantitative easing, the effects, and just noticing that. And that's what I do. I notice when some things just aren't quite right. That's where opportunities are in all ideas, right? Looking at different product lines and so on, and noticing that's not quite right.
Right.
And then you make improvements, and you have an opportunity to come up with something better. But when it comes to something big like the economy, and you notice something's off, and then you realize, whoa, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't be doing this at all.
Right.
And then the need to saying, well, what am I exactly are my kids going to be doing? And, it all happened when my kids were born. When they're 9 and 10 years old. I have twin boys, and my daughter's 10. And really looking at how am I going to secure their future? And the economy is going to obviously play a big role in their future.
You're creating change, whether it's through the inventions and innovation that you're doing or have done in the medical space, but you are also innovating and putting out new ideas around the economy. Tell us one story of how you're finding fulfillment, significance, and purpose in what you do. And at the larger level, why what you're doing, it matters. So why is that?
Well, when it comes to the economy, it is very simple to find, you know, importance and value in hopefully affecting that. I mean,
Right.
and what's interesting about economics is people sort of say economics, ooh, boring, but economics is the human ecosystem. It it interprets or it makes you pay what you pay for your house. It defines what you make on your paycheck, and it determines the quality of your life. Not being interested in economics is not being interested in your life and the life of your kids or the future of humanity. And so one of my goals really is to raise the interest people have in economics. And I do that, and I want to do that, and I am doing that through storytelling. Optimizing America is a story. It's a novel, and it's a thriller. It's a political campaign about a president who wants to make these changes in the economy, and he gathers momentum and has a run at the presidency.
As you're going through this and as you're growing your past business, but also your future business, what's one challenge you're currently working to overcome in the business?
Well, right now, the book is the business. Selling books is interesting, and this is why I said I have more than one book now, because you literally need
Okay.
more than one book in order to sell, your primary book. And so you need to give books away for free to get people hooked and interested, and then this sort of builds a following, and hopefully they step up and read Optimizing America. So right now I'm giving away a book for free and so on, and it's all available on Amazon, and you can download the first book for free, which is called Hacking the American Economy. So yeah, so selling books is a challenge because it's a whole new way of doing business that I'm not used to, and from a business perspective, that's my challenge right now.
So, as you're doing this, what's the next big goal you have for what you're doing?
Well, obviously, my goal is to create a better world. So I am my next step with the commercial, or basically getting the word out there through selling books, is to create a social movement, and the goal for the movement is to change the economic system to be durable, sustainable, safe, and fosters a healthy environment. And many listeners might be thinking, that's not economics. Economics is all about bank loans and mortgages and so on. But that's the problem, right? Our economy is driving forward, developing technologies that are addictive, using big data to undermine elections throughout the world. Technologies of the last couple of years is really taking sort of a not a very positive turn, and really the underlying cause is this economy that is just driving towards a future with nobody in control. And if we dive in and really if everybody starts understanding economics, they'll understand that the political side of things is just one half of the picture. We need to get economic control over our future, which we don't have right now.
That's so good. We're going to dive more into this, into the world of innovation, more into the world of economy and also technology when we come back for our second segment with Jarl Jenson. So you're ready to turn that big idea and dream into reality. What do you do next? You're sitting there scratching your head going, I just don't know where to start or what to do. Well, the Jumblethink team is here to help. We help in so many different ways, but one of the ways that we help is by one-on-one consulting and coaching to work you through the process of turning an idea from an idea and into a real-world practical solution. We specialize in 3 areas: dream and idea strategy, technology strategy, and innovation strategy. So, whatever your problem is, wherever you are in creating your big idea, swing on over to jumblethink.com/help me. That's jumblethink.com/help me. You can learn more about the services we offer and how we can start the process of turning your dreams and ideas from the imagination inside your head and into real world solutions. Now let's rejoin our conversation with today's guest, Jarl Jenson. We are back with Jarl Jenson, and we're diving into the world of innovation and invention, economy, ecosystem, technology, and how we can really make a shift in our thinking. So before we jump into this, Jarl, I want to make sure we allow people to know how they can find and connect what we're talking about today. Find your book, find your resources. You got some cool stuff going on.
Yeah, so I have Amazon has an author central search or page that I have there, and if you type in my name, Jarl Jensen, Jarl Jensen, Jensen, I have an author page there, and all my books are available there. Some are free, and have a look. And I definitely recommend Optimizing America. Not only is it educational, it's a really good read.
Very, very cool. I'm super excited to talk to you because you think differently. You always have. You talked about inventions when you're young. You have multiple patents in the world of medical innovation. For you, this mindset of thinking outside of the norm, questioning things, and noticing things that are out of place or don't feel quite right. How do you really tap into that? It's almost like a superpower where you're able to see what others miss, where you're able to encounter things and make change for the future. For you, how do you tap into this awareness?
Well, first, my father was also an inventor, and he really got me
Cool.
started with ideas young. He used to play a game called that we called the invention game, where we would just pick strange objects out and try to come up with the most uses for them. So the number one thing I think is to constantly be in this search for ideas, different applications, different uses for things, different ways of doing things. So that has to be sort of constantly going in your mind. It has to be part of how you think. The next thing which helps me is, and it, in certain situations it's not helpful, but when it comes to ideas, daydreaming is sort of something I can't help. It's for me, it's very lucid. I can move ideas around in my mind and look at them from different angles, and it's all part of this sort of hallucinogenic daydream where things are very lucid and very real, where I just don't have the attention span to pay attention in class, for example, back when I was in school. So daydreaming is very important for ideas, and so I think I'm not sure how you trigger that. For me, it just sort of happens when an idea is sort of brewing in my mind. But for people who want to really evolve ideas more, or have an idea they want to involve more, they gotta be thinking about it all the time.
So it's just being aware and intentional. There's like an intentional choosing to do this and not just hoping one day the best idea ever pops into your mind.
Yeah, the likelihood of the best idea ever popping into somebody's mind is probably not a reasonable expectation. Usually, ideas seem great initially, but they have to be worked out. You have to ideate them, you have to change them, you have to evolve them. And I see this, I work with ideas, like I mentioned, all the time. I'm working on a couple of startups, and the initial idea just keeps evolving and it keeps getting better. Or maybe there's a setback where a certain approach doesn't work, but it is fascinating how far ideas have to go. So, one recommendation I have when it comes to being inventive is don't go for the patent first.
Okay. All right.
Go for proof first. Work on it. Really, patents get expensive. Take your time. One approach, if people are really nervous, which is natural for inventors, is to file a provisional first. You have your year, but don't turn it into an application unless you really have something. And if you don't,
Okay.
just file another provisional and keep it rolling that way. Really try to delay patents as long as possible.
So when you're in that iterative state where you're processing the idea, you're seeing if it's legitimate, you're looking at it from different angles, and you're vetting it out, creating something from it. What are some of the steps you take in that process?
I definitely believe you have to be hands-on. Don't hire
Okay.
somebody else. Don't hire consultants. Don't hire, no, you've got to do it yourself. You can add people, partners, what have you, but they should be people that are specifically interested, skilled in whatever that idea is about, and that would help. But you have to be hands-on. You can't outsource that.
So you have to be present. You can't just have the idea and just go, "Hey, run with it" to somebody else. You can have those additional people that are helping you process it, work through it, partners in it. But you've got to be present to see that idea to fruition. You've got to do the work to take the idea you have and make it a reality.
Yeah, and you just, I mean, even if you're a CEO, you look at Steve Jobs,
Right.
and Elon Musk. These guys are hands-on with those ideas, and that's why they make
Right.
their companies innovative. These companies that try to systemize innovation, they just basically, you invent something, third engineer down the line. We need something in this area. They don't tend out to be very innovative. Innovative companies have innovative leaders.
Right. Right. I love that. Innovative companies have innovative leaders. That's a powerful statement because what you're really saying there is that whatever you put at the top, that philosophy, that mindset, that culture trickles down to everyone else. And so whoever's at the head really sets the tone for everything else that happens.
Well, let me be clear. I think a company can be innovative in the sense that they can make their car or product, sorry, better, faster, cheaper. That's one
Okay.
side of it.
Yeah.
But to actually invent something new, like an iPhone, what Steve Jobs did was he went across the street into his own little building, had a small team of 5 or 6 people, and he created the iPhone completely separate from running Apple. And
Right.
and that is where the innovative spark for new products, let's say, comes
Hmm.
from. It literally comes from the mind of the leader who
Mm.
drives it to reality by being hands-on. Um, Other types of innovation, just making things better, that is definitely assignable. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm trying to separate the two: innovation in terms of better, faster, cheaper, and invention in terms of new product lines that are new to the market. That's got to be hands-on by the leader. I mean,
That's
and I think
so.
that's what you'll see in most cases in the industry. I know there are exceptions, but there always are.
Yeah, and that's so powerful there because it's easy to lump innovation and invention together often, and in that we lose the power of that. They are two very different things that serve different purposes, and they're both awesome, but the approach and the interaction is different in those levels. And I think Steve Jobs is a great example because we look at Apple right now, and they're missing that leadership piece, and you can see it suffer for how they are inventing and innovating and approaching problems for the future. It's just not the same.
Absolutely. Although I do think their ear pods are pretty cool.
Yeah, they are pretty cool for sure. I want to dive into what you said before in the first segment. You were talking about the economy and humanity and how often we go, I don't care about the economy. I'm just happy with my job. I'm happy with the status quo. And because of that, we aren't engaged in the larger conversation of economy and the longevity of how economy affects humanity. Can you share a little bit more, go a little bit deeper on the intertwining of humanity and economy and and how that's going to impact us in the generations to come?
Well, I mean, if we look at sort of the history of money. We know as we started 10,000 years ago with hunter-gatherers, we would literally go out into nature, find food and survive. And then later we started trading perhaps with other tribes. And so there was trade, and then there was some form of currency, like a gold or something, gold coins and so on. So use that as sort of an intermediary of trade. And then finally we started having central banks where there was coins issued by the government and so on. Followed up into the creation of the Federal Reserve, which was basically the Central Bank of America being run by banks, commercial banks. And so what happened when the commercial banks took over was that they basically got access to printing more and more money through a fractional gold reserve. And then finally, when Nixon was in office, he took the gold standard off. He refused to sell gold for dollars, which basically means that the dollar was no longer backed by gold. And basically giving banks the ability to print all the money they want in order to finance loans like mortgages and credit cards and so on. And the problem with that is that if you can finance as many mortgages as you want, basically an infinite amount, the value of houses goes up. And
how does that happen? How does that happen? If you can do financing for infinite amount of housing, then the price goes up. How are those connected?
Well, it's like this. If you sell a house and or if you are selling a house, you're going to want to get multiple bids.
Right.
And the higher bidder wins, obviously. And so
absolutely.
If everybody in the area is making a certain amount of money, it's a matter of how much money you can borrow based on how much your income is that's who's the winner is. So even if you lower interest rates, it's just going to raise the house prices. So
it's tied to supply and demand. Then the more you can sell, the less supply there is, and so the demand's high, supply's low, price goes up.
Right. In other words, there's an infinite amount of loans to be given, but there's a limited amount of housing.
Okay.
So as long as there is movement in selling of houses, the prices are going up.
Right.
And so there, until obviously you have a financial crash, which is a different scenario. But in general, and you can follow housing data. Once the gold was removed from the backing of the dollar, fiat money was created, the cost of housing has gone up. So basically what that means is taking a larger and larger piece of your paycheck.
Right.
And also things like credit cards weren't possible without fiat money, because you wouldn't have the ability just to print money to finance a credit card.
Right, because the money didn't exist. It's a commodity that was real, tangible, even though it was paper tied to something.
Right.
You had an actual asset that had value, whereas when you do a loan, the asset is the trust of interest rates or loan fees and things like that.
Right. So now that does seem great, that hey, now I've got credit cards, now I can maybe I can bridge the gap, or I have this for most wealthy people it's just a nice service, but from an economic perspective and for people not making enough money, now that they can afford things on credit, they're winding up paying more for those things because there's a greater demand for those things. So that they actually need now you need credit cards to get by if you're not making enough money. And that could be a situation where it will just cost you less, because all the other people who you are competing against when you're buying things now can also afford it because they have credit. So basically you're just building up more loans. You're building up bigger mortgages, you're building up more use of credit cards, because basically at this point you have to use those things.
Makes sense. It is, when you put it in those terms and you put it into the reality of what's going on, it gets a little scary, because there's nothing, before you either had it or you didn't have it. Now you cannot have it, and then there's no safety net.
Right. I mean, that gets into the political side, no safety net, but it is another part of economics. Why is there no safety net?
Right.
In other words, couple hundred years ago, the safety net was nature. You could always go fishing. You could always go, hunt for something. That's not quite reality anymore.
Right.
I mean, today you can survive, but being homeless is really not an acceptable option, and it is very, very, very risky. Your life is
Yeah.
threatened if you're homeless. So it's sort of like there used to be a natural safety net, the environment. That has
Yeah.
been taken away. For example, you used to be able to have a nice little family farm, make a living, pay. You could probably pay taxes as well. Sell a few goods at the local market, and you'd make a decent life. The family farm is no longer a viable lifestyle
Right.
or a viable means of making a living, and the reason is because of the mega farms, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Corporatization of farming.
yeah, consolidation. It really.
Yeah.
But why is there consolidation? Consolidation only exists because if you merge two farms, right, you get higher volume. You can lower your cost to sell those products, your farming products, and the overall cost of farming can be lowered, and you can be more competitive. But
Right.
why can you merge two farms? Why can the one farmer go over to the other, his neighboring farm, and say, "Listen, I'd like to buy your farm"? Why can he do that? Because the bank can now finance that merger, that consolidation. So the number of farms that existed in the beginning of the 19th century to how many farms exist today, it's about 25%. The farms are about 4 to 6 times larger, but there's 4 to 6 times fewer farms. But that means fewer businesses, fewer employees, and less competition as well. But it's all because of this banking industry running the economy, having access to infinite amounts of money to loan.
Wow. Wow. That is craziness.
Well, and since you bring up technology, we should talk about what's driving technology.
Yeah. That's where I'd love to go next. Yeah. Let's do that.
Just like the farms were basically forced to consolidate in order to compete and survive, technology is driven basically by what loans can be financed. For example, if I buy a robot to replace 4 employees, well, if the employees cost $25,000 a year each, that's $100,000. And let's say the robot costs $600,000. Well, at a very low interest rates, that will take me 6 years to pay for that robot. That's a pretty good deal. So I'm going to invest in that robot and replace him. Now, that company, or let's say it's myself that's buying this robot, I wouldn't be able to buy that robot if I couldn't get the capital financing required to buy it. If the banks didn't have access to infinite capital, I couldn't buy that. So when you look at and you can start sort of doing predictions on what kind of technologies we're going to see, technologies are only going to evolve if they are cost effective. In other words, you borrow the money and that money will be paid back within 7 years. Otherwise, and nowadays with the low interest rates, you can even take longer.
Right.
There's worse. There are very few investment opportunities. So investing into automation and replacing workers is becoming even easier for industries because you have very low interest rates and no other place to put your money. So investing to replace people's jobs makes a lot of sense for corporations. But the bottom line is technology is evolving to either replace older technology, less efficient technology, or replace people who aren't as efficient in the long run as automation.
Right. And we've seen that in the automotive industry. We've seen that in manufacturing as a whole, that robotics, artificial intelligence of some level programs are replacing the human workforce. So long term, that means that what happens to all those people? What happens to how they provide for their family? What happens to how they survive at that point?
Right. And this is my great concern. Wealthy people have proven time and time again that they really just don't care about the poor.
Right. Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, as Americans, we are sitting here for over 10, 20, 30 years with 5 million children and people dying every year across the world from poverty. So ignoring the circumstances the rest of the world has, and even inside America, an estimated 200,000 people die a year from poverty. So we are very well, accustomed to just looking the other way. And so, for example, when the autonomous car and the autonomous truck comes out, and 5 million truck drivers and 5 million or total jobs are lost, it's tough. Go figure it out. That's the message we're going to have for everybody. But the problem is that everybody has to understand we are quickly going towards a society with the owners of the technology and the non-owners. And the non-owners just don't have a say, especially in America, where money talks and people only vote every 2 to 4 years.
I want to circle back to what do we do to change this. But before we do that, I want to dive into the book, because the book is really kind of cool. You've used story, allegory. You've written this novel to tell the story to help bring change. So before we dive into the actual mechanism of how we start shifting our culture to solve this problem, I want to dive into using fiction to tell a true story that brings change. Why did you take this approach?
Well, I mean, this is part of bringing an idea into a business or into an entity that has momentum. That is really that was my best way. But at the end of the day, it's a cultural change, as you just mentioned. I believe that only through storytelling will we, in simple, plain language, will we get the message across that, number one, things aren't going in the right direction. Most people know that, but the choices we're making now are getting, dire. We're making things worse, not better, but we are asking for change. And as I often say, you can't ask for change if you don't know the solution. I'm trying to offer everybody the real solution, really the only solution we have, and we need to see very soon before things get really crazy.
That's really cool. And I love that by telling a story, you can get people to imagine, see, and really envision the future that you're talking about. So let's talk about that future. What is the solution, and what is the approach that needs to happen to make that cultural change?
Well, first of all, economics has to become cool. It has to become a dinner time conversation piece. People go out on a date. Let's talk about economics, because it's fascinating once you get into it. The change we need to see is at the Federal Reserve level, monetary policy. Monetary policy only has one purpose. It is to keep the commercial banks sound and secure. That is their number one purpose. They have things like unemployment rates, but their target number is 5%. That means 10 to 12 million people are unemployed, and they're happy. To me, 10 to 20 million people unemployed is, number one, unproductive, and number two, a shame. But that, to them, that's full employment. Just in that alone is like, really, 12 million people have to be unemployed so the banking industry can feel secure that there's not going to be too much inflation, and so interest rates won't wind up hurting them? That seems to be something wrong with that from a social perspective. Now, here's what people have to understand is that, number one, money is power. And it's people power. What it means is that when people work, right, that is accumulating power. The accumulation of work is power. That's the same thing with a battery, right? A battery charges electricity, and when you use it, it does work. And money and power money is people power, right? So the Federal Reserve has access to printing money, infinite amount of money. They have access to infinite people power. When you start looking at it that way, you can say, whoa, we are letting the bankers control an infinite source of people power. And
Right.
from there, you can start realizing that, well, if we had other interests, if we changed what their goals are, if we changed how they operate, we can do so much more for society, for the economy, and certainly we can achieve things like a durable, a sustainable, a safe, and a healthy environment just by changing and being creative about the approach of the Federal Reserve.
Super cool and really great ideas around that. You have a blog that goes deeper into some of the issues with banking, with the economy as a whole. You also have your books that you've written. Tell us a little bit about those and who may really enjoy engaging with that content and what they may learn.
Well, I have three books. Number one book is the novel, which is Optimizing America. And that really, sort of through storytelling, gets into the economics of change and also sort of helps paint a picture of a president, what he has to stand for and what he has to be up against in order to get voted into office. I then wrote a book called Hacking the American Economy, which really talks about what we need to change in the Federal Reserve, how to change the monetary policy in order to create a future for all of us that we all want, and that instead of being, being replaced by technology, we start working hand in hand in technology. And we also have the opportunity to create massive amounts of innovation as a society by finally making poverty go away, making poverty a place to make money, not a place to shun and ignore. And these are all parts of the problems when the only way to get money into the system, basically 100% of the money in our economy is borrowed money. And if only wealthy people can borrow money, obviously the poor will have a very tough time getting it.
Right.
So we can fix those things, and we can create a world that is so much better, and it's even better for wealthy people. It's certainly better for our government, and certainly we can get government out of all of these very expensive social programs, which when you look at the founding fathers of the Constitution, they didn't really have that in mind. The founding fathers were right. They certainly weren't socialists. They were. They had three things in mind: protect our property, because they were rich white guys. Number two, the government should play a role in resolving disputes between people and their property. And number three, protect people's rights. That was sort of the trade-off. Hey, we're going to give a lot of power to wealthy people, but everybody has rights. And that was the trade-off. And I don't like the idea that these rich, powerful white guys set up this economy to keep them in power. But you know what? When you compare it to the rest of the world, maybe it's okay for money to have a choice, have a voice. But that's not what's going on when it comes to the banking industry. The banking industry has basically privatized our economy. They own it, and this is creating a lot of problems. And so that's about hacking the American economy, how to change it. And then finally, I also wrote a little bit about the history, America's history of wealth influencing political power. And that's really how I got into the founding fathers, Nixon, Bretton Woods. The Bretton Woods Agreement is fascinating, how that really has created a disaster in Africa, in South America. People don't talk about that either. They really should, because we need to have a global meeting and redo the Bretton Woods Agreement, because that is a disaster. It's really the cause of millions of people dying every year from poverty.
Wow. Lot there. Cool topics. And you've definitely done your homework. You've definitely researched this stuff. You know this stuff. So it's really cool to hear about this, especially since it's a topic that I think most people are either complicit or just simply want to deny even exists. So it's really cool that there's a voice that's saying, hey, it's time to wake up and pay attention to this. How can they find these resources? How can they connect with your books? How can they find your blog?
My blog is easy to find. Just type in Optimizing America, and you'll find my book. You'll find my blog. You'll find links. I've got videos on there. I'm really trying to get the message out, and I'm looking. This is very early stages, but I'm looking to start this social movement. So sign up, text me, email me, do whatever you like. But I need people. I need people to make these changes happen. Look, enough's enough. This is ridiculous. We could be living in a much better world. The reason why things are so messed up is just one simple area. It's the Federal Reserve and the monetary policy. We change that, we change the world.
Wow. Really powerful. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Jarl Jenson to do our rapid fire questions. Turning your big idea and dream into a reality can be difficult. We've created some free guides to help you on that journey. Swing on over to jumblethink.com/guide. That's jumblethink.com/guide to download any of our free guides. 2 of them right now that we have out are Overcoming the Unknown and How to Know When You've Found Your Dream. So swing on over to jumblethink.com/guide to download your free guides. Now let's dive into our rapid fire questions with Jarl Jenson. We are back with Jarl Jenson and our rapid fire questions. Jarl, are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Let's go.
The first question is, what is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
Start small and add people.
What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
We have to re-engineer the economy, America's economy, the national economy, the global economy.
And what do you want your legacy to be?
I like my legacy to say that I helped show the way.
Where do you find inspiration?
Everywhere.
What is one book that you think every dreamer or entrepreneur should read, and why?
Well, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, a dreamer, somebody who's looking to make change, I think there's a book out there for you, and you need to let that book find you. So I don't want to recommend a specific book, because I really think that everybody's in their own unique position in life, and that's what's always worked for me. That book all of a sudden just stuck out, and I knew I would read it. And it's almost 90% of the time that book just turned out to be just exactly what I was looking for.
What is one tool that is significant for the success of your business?
My laptop.
And what is one habit you find helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
I prioritized to-do list and identifying those top 3 things that are most important today.
How do you start and finish your day?
With my family.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing?
Paying bills.
And then the final rapid fire question is, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Secure the future for my kids and hopefully everybody's kids.
As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave a moment where you can give us one final thought for us to take away from today's episode.
People have to get engaged with economics, understanding it and understanding why our world is getting seriously dysfunctional. It's all about economics. You have to start defining economics as the human ecosystem. And once you understand that economics is really your personal ecosystem, then I think you'll wake up and want to know more.
Jarl, it's been a lot of fun having you on the podcast. I'm really excited about the message you're sharing. I love that you're writing about it, getting the word out that people need to be aware of this and involved in these discussions. So thanks for taking time out and sharing amazing insights.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really excited and motivated right now, and I'm optimistic.
Once again, we want to thank Jarl Jenson for taking time out, sharing his story, and giving us insights into the world of economics. If you want to learn more about Jarl and check out his books, you can find the links in the episode notes. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with this final thought. So often we're hyper-focused on our lives and what's right in front of us that we miss the bigger picture of the things that are significant. Take notice of the things around you, whether it's a friend or family member that's in need, or whether it's a larger situation like the wildfires in Redding, California. Take notice of what's happening around you, and then think of the solutions, the way that you can be a solution to that problem. It might be your big idea or dream that helps somebody else reach their next big idea and dream. So go out there, chase your big idea and dream, and change the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants peuvent peut également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.